Hello and welcome to Survival Sweden. Once again, this is Tractor Rant Part 5, I think. So what to look for when you're buying an old tractor? Well, I'm not going to go through everything in absolute detail. I'm going to go through some basic pointers and things that are really going to ruin your day if you get it wrong. This is always a weak point, these steering pinions here. Make sure these are not cracked or split or about to fall apart or turning where they shouldn't be. Make sure the wheels are not wobbly. And make sure it's not welded, because often when they are broken, people will put a weld around the top thinking it's sufficient, and it really is not. Actually, I can see my wheels moving a bit there. That bearing's a bit loose. I probably just need to tighten that up, which is probably really simple. Take this hubcap off, just tighten the bearing up and put that back. Good job I had a look. Another thing to look for is the colour of the oil. Now there is I'm trying to remember where the dipstick is. Dipstick, where are you? Here it is. So you take your dipstick out and have a look at the colour of the oil, and it should be anything from clear beautiful oil if someone's just changed it to a sort of blacky colour like this. If it's got any white in it, that's a sign of water having got in there somehow, usually through the cylinder head gasket. That means you've got a blown cylinder head gasket in general, which could mean you just have to swap it. And it's a known fault on these Fordsons that they do blow cylinder gaskets sometimes. Not the biggest job in the world. I've done it once or twice. I did it at -17, I think, a few years ago. Wasn't great pleasure, but it wasn't a great trial, you know, even doing it first time. And the bolts on these things, they're made of a good quality steel, so everything unbolts pretty easily. You can get information online pretty easily. You can get the spare parts cheaply and easily, no problem with that. But it's not a hassle you want unnecessarily. So look for any signs of water in there. When water mixes with oil, it forms an emulsion. It becomes a white colour. And the other thing to do is to look for the opposite of that, or the complementary effect of that, could we say. So you might want to, or you could check in here, first of all, open up your cap and see if you find any traces of white. You can run your little finger around there, see if any of it's white in the rocker box. If any, that means water's got in there somehow, again, into your oil. The other thing to do is to check your water. So you can open this, and well, on this it's a little bit awkward. You might need a stick with a bit of rag tied on the end or something, or just feed some rag somehow carefully so it doesn't go loose into there, and pull it out and just check that there's no oil on the rag, because, you know, again, if the cylinder head gasket's blown, you might find that oil has got into the water system. So another thing to check for is the colour of the exhaust. And you can't always rely on it when you've immediately started it. You know, sometimes an engine has to warm up. Old diesel engines might start off with a little more black smoke than they should have, and it will soon turn to a decent colour. This one's always burned very well, whether it's, no matter how warm or cold the temperature outdoors. It's always been a very clear burn. But, you know, black soot, white smoke, just not a good sign. Really, it should have a clear, almost clear exhaust coming out of it. The clutch, you know, that's a big one. And the sign of a worn clutch on a tractor is, one, that you'll feel it when you drive it. It doesn't feel as though it's either, it won't engage or disengage properly, depending what's gone on. But often you'll smell it, you know, make it work a bit. If you take a tractor for a test drive, try and tow a trailer with it, you know, a big heavy one, or just go up some pretty steep hills, you know, put it through its paces, and you might feel the clutch slipping. You might smell a burning smell, which you shouldn't. You know, that's probably a slipping clutch or oil coming out of one of the main oil seals around the crankshaft into the clutch housing, and then burning from the hot friction on the clutch. So you shouldn't have a smell there. And also, with a worn clutch, you will very often see some smoke coming out from this sort of area, and you won't often know exactly where, but it'll be coming out. And you can listen in there too, and listen if you hear a rattling and something doesn't sound quite right. Another thing to look for is pressure coming past the pistons. When the pistons get old and worn, or the seals are not functioning properly, once you've started the tractor up, if you put your finger over here, you'll feel a pressure, and you shouldn't really feel a pressure. You could have a mild pressure, a mild sort of constant pressure, but it shouldn't really be pushing hard against your finger. That would be a sign that the pistons are worn. And also, once you take the dipstick out, you absolutely should not see oil bouncing and flooding out of here again. That would be an overpressure in the system, you know, making the oil belch out of there. That shouldn't be happening. So that's something worth looking for. You want to look for loose couplings all over the place, you know, check all the bars and all the levers, and see if the owner who's selling it has bothered to lubricate it. You know, you should see signs around your grease nipples, you know, this is covered in grease, so this has been well lubricated, at least by someone. But you know, you'll often see clean grease around the nipples, or you'll see when they've been reasonably cleaned, or someone's used them and they haven't just sat there unused for years. That's important. You can check linkages. You know, this one's bent here. You can see that doesn't really matter. But if you want a real top of the range tractor, you're paying a lot of money, then you wouldn't want to have these things loose as I did. I just wanted a cheap tractor. Does me fine. You might find here that you'll find the hydraulic oil leaking out of the end of the axles here, because this one is lubricated by the oil. And it would mean an oil seal is gone. And when I bought this, the guy told me that it had just gone and he'd just replaced this. So this is a new seal on there. It's done hardly any miles. And you can see the difference with this one here on the other side, which looks pretty old and rusty. You can see that hasn't been done for ages. And you can see it's a bit of a dark colour, you know, maybe a little bit of oil coming out there, but nothing to worry about. It's not dripping out or anything. And check, you know, check little things like, do the gears engage smoothly? Are they very, very clunky? You know, these old tractors, they don't have synchro mesh gearboxes. You have to do what's called double declutching. You have to rev the engine to a pretty exact amount of revs and then get the gear in quickly by hand so it doesn't crunch too much. But after a certain amount of that, certain number of years, of course, they will wear out if they haven't been driven well, and you'll hear them grinding and making awful noises. So make sure things go into gear smoothly. Make sure your hydraulics are working. Another common problem on tractors is that if you put the hydraulic arms up by putting the hydraulic pressure on using the lever there, these will lift up pretty high. So then you take off the hydraulic pressure, for example, just switch the tractor off, and they shouldn't really sink quickly, you know. It doesn't matter if they sink, but what it means is that something is worn within the way the hydraulic system is made, and it can just be a speck of dust sometimes on a return valve, but it means it's not holding its pressure. You know, ideally those bars should stay up all night. Mine do. I can take the pressure off and turn the tractor off, leave them stuck up in the air. Next morning they're still going to be up there, you know, and that's a sign of a very healthy hydraulic system. If it's not going up quickly and easily, or it's making an awful lot of noise doing it, you'd want to know why. And if it goes down too easily when the engine's off, you'd want to know why.